Applied Linguistics Group uploaded this video for BS English students. Dr. KHALID MALIK, the founder, has a PhD in Applied Linguistics TESOL. Having more than 25 research papers, he taught at many foreign universities and is now in a postdoctoral study program abroad. Join Applied Linguistics Group at youtube.com/@1966 Pakistani or use a QR code to join our Facebook group at
Translating idioms and metaphors. Translating or interpreting idioms and metaphors. Accurately translating idioms, metaphors, or indeed any form of figurative language can be very tricky. They bring along a lot to think about in one language, let alone two. Idioms and metaphors are loaded with stylism and hidden messages which can be a nightmare to transfer into a second language. Lots of times there isn't even a logical equivalent in that second language, so what are we as interpreters to do? Well, we can narrow it down to 3 techniques or methods which help us to convey the message as best we can. It all comes down to one of our favorite sayings: we don't translate the words, we translate the meaning. Method 1. Translate it word for word. Okay, I lied. The first method is translating the words and hoping the meaning comes out right. This is obviously not the preferred option, but it's a place to start nonetheless. Think about an idiom such as skeletons in the closet, meaning secrets you keep hidden from others. Translating this phrase into Spanish gives us esqueletos en el armario, which, while not perfect, is pretty close to conveying the same meaning as the English idiom. Of course, this method has its holes. Word-for-word translations can work, but most of the time they are not the best, or even acceptable, for that matter. Think about an expression like, say cheese, used when trying to encourage others to smile while taking a picture. A word-for-word translation into Spanish gives us di queso, which would make you look a bit crazy. The problem here is that word-for-word translations forfeit whatever context was present in the original message. In this example, the fact that the phrase is used when taking pictures, which is the very foundation of these literary devices. The phrase in English has nothing to do with cheese, and everything to do with getting people to smile for a photo. This is a good place to begin with your translation, however, as you can go back to add in that context and revise as needed. Method 2. Translate the meaning. The most preferred option by far. Translating the meaning allows us to preserve all of those stylistic nuances present in the original message, and we maintain the context too. Translating the meaning inherently forces us to pay attention to this information. Therefore, our translation should come out to be far more accurate than those from the first method. Thinking back to our example of skeletons in the closet, the closest equivalent in Spanish would be cadavers en el armario. This preserves the style of the original and also conveys the context of keeping secrets hidden from others. Likewise, while di queso lacks the necessary context for it to make sense, sonrientes conveys the intended meaning and context of the original message. The problem is, what if there just isn't an equivalent? What if, after scouring for hours through resources, there is just not an accurate translation that maintains style and context? I'd say look for a bit longer, because there probably is an equivalent somewhere out there, but if still nothing comes up, this is where method 3 comes in, explaining it. Method 3. Much like if you were to encounter a highly technical word in the courts that doesn't have an exact equivalent, the best fallback is to convey the meaning as best you can to explain it. You'll lose all of the style of the original message, but at least you'd be conveying the meaning accurately, which should come first in translation and interpretation. Thinking back to our original example, skeletons in the closet could be translated in Spanish to secretos vergonzosos de la familia, which literally explains the message of the idiom. It doesn't sound as pretty, sure, but it'll convey the meaning, which is the ultimate goal of the interpreter. Sometimes, like with our example of, say, cheese, you can kill two birds with one stone and maintain style and meaning. Isonrience accomplishes both. Functionally, this will be the best method to choose for conveying the message. Stylistically, it will never have the same elegance as the original idiom or metaphor. That's perfectly okay, however, as long as the meaning is the same. When possible, Method 1 can be used as a stepping stone to get to Method 2, which should be the go-to, and Method 3 can be the last resort for if you just need to get the message across. Using these three techniques will allow you to carefully navigate these literary devices and deliver the most accurate interpretation possible. Translate metaphors and idioms. How to translate metaphors and idioms. Translators deal with a lot of challenges. Apart from making sure that text is grammatically correct and uses appropriate tone, they must also decide when and how to translate certain cultural aspects and linguistic nuances. Enter the delicate art of idiom translation. Working as a Chinese translator, my greatest enemies are the dreaded Qingyu. Chengyus are four-character idiomatic expressions based on classical Chinese stories and are commonly used in modern-day Chinese writing and spoken language. It is usually impossible to guess the meaning of a Qingyu without any explanation. Even translators with a native-level grasp of the language must research the meaning of these phrases in order to properly translate them. From my experience working as a translator, I have come to realize that the way in which I translate metaphors and idioms is done on a case-by-case basis. It is important to keep in mind that linguistic rules vary depending on the language and context. In Chinese, it is acceptable to use an idiom or metaphor in a formal document, whereas formal English text should usually be as simple and clear as possible. I can, however, provide some basic tips for when you encounter an idiom or metaphor which needs to be translated. Understand the meaning. The first step is to understand the meaning of the idiom or metaphor. In the case of the Chinese Qingyu, this will most likely require some research. Make sure you not only understand the meaning of the metaphor or idiom, but also the reason behind why it is being used based on the context. Find an equivalent phrase in the target language. After fully understanding the meaning, determine whether there is an equivalent metaphor or idiom in the target language. Keep in mind that the target language metaphor may use similar words or objects, or it could use completely different wording to express the same meaning. Analyze the context. Lastly, decide whether the target language idiom or metaphor is appropriate based on the context and formality of the document. If the equivalent metaphor will be easily understood by the target audience and correlates with the overall tone of the text, go ahead and use it. The main goal, however, is that the text flows and sounds natural to a native speaker, and is appropriate and fitting for the context it is being used for. You can check this by asking yourself if a native speaker would use the metaphor or idiom to express the phrase within the context. Cultural and linguistic nuances can definitely add to a piece. However, as a general rule for translating, it is best to use simple and clear text when it comes to idiom translation.
Applied Linguistics Group uploaded this video for BS English students. Dr. KHALID MALIK, the founder, has a PhD in Applied Linguistics TESOL. Having more than 25 research papers, he taught at many foreign universities and is now in a postdoctoral study program abroad. Join Applied Linguistics Group at youtube.com/@1966Pakistani or use a QR code to join our Facebook group at